KMT. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Today, we're at the epicenter of the web and politics, the 5th annual Personal Democracy Forum. Here at the theaters and back rooms of Jazz at Lincoln Center, the web's most influential thinkers have been networking for change in person. It's all about how the internet can change the political process, change how we govern ourselves. These are highlights from our 2 days here, June 23rd and 24th, 2008.
We think it's time to reboot the political system. Some applications are not responding well, like Congress, the White House, City Hall, and the Fourth Estate, the mainstream media.
McCain has a YouTube problem, is just closing in on 3 million views in a fairly short period of time because people are passing it around.
Writing is not the tool that's being offered to us. The medium that we're getting now is a programming medium.
And we've got some new software that we want to run.
Wikipedia is exactly 1 hour away from destruction, utter destruction at all times.
It's not my truth and your truth. It's the truth.
As long as you are fact-checking, you're personally putting out, and that there is some basis for what you are articulating, you have a leg to stand on.
Hi, I'm Chuck DeFeo, Vice President and General Manager for townhall.com and co-publisher and editor-in-chief for Town Hall magazine.
I'm Ariana Huffington here at the Personal Democracy Forum conference, and I'm the editor of the Huffington Post.
The question we were asked to debate or discuss was, is it really a new media, or is it old media just in a new package, or old wine in a new bottle?
I know that at the Huffington Post we celebrate the best of the old: fact-checking, accuracy, the pursuit of truth. These are sacred rules of traditional journalism, and we absolutely want them to be part of the new media.
What we found, though, in that broadcast model where everything is being shoved down to you, and when candidates for office were talking at you rather than talking with you, we developed apathy within this country. There was a lessened level of engagement in the political discourse. That's not healthy.
What we want to give up is the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency, the assumption that somehow every story, every issue has two sides, and that the truth is to be found by splitting the difference. That's what I want to give up, and that's what those of us working in the new media want to give up.
It's not enough to simply break a good story, tell the truth once. We need to stay on that story. And that's where we need the obsessive-compulsive disorder of the new media, as opposed to the ADD of the old media. Look at all the stories that are broken, often on the front pages of the New York Times and then abandoned there. The Pentagon military analyst story. That's a huge story. But what happened? It took the blogosphere to keep the story alive.
My dad's been saying since the 2000 election that he's like, in my day, we weren't this polarized. And why are we so polarized? His response is because no one can determine what the truth is. No one can agree to what the facts are. We just did a report in Town Hall magazine about the facts on the ground and how, the things are improving dramatically. There's a certain set of truth that I personally believe. Ariana's articulated a certain set of truth that she personally believes right now. I don't know if we really truly know what is going to happen.
You know what is so interesting? The right used to be criticizing the left for being relativists. They were the ones that believed in absolutes, and we're the relativists. And now what has happened is that, as Don Rumsfeld epitomized, they kind of are clamoring that we can't really know. It's not knowable. It's all unknown. Who knows what's happening in Iraq? Maybe we're winning, maybe we're losing, who knows? And I'm saying that we do know, that there are certain benchmarks that were set, for example, before the surge. Remember the benchmarks? The benchmarks were not about a reduction of violence. The benchmarks were about a breathing space so there could be real political reconciliation. That has not happened, and that is a fact, and that is not my truth, that is their truth. That's where the media are letting us down.
What has truly been lost in this fragmentation as that one-to-many model is beginning to crumble is a limited fuse ability to control what we believe the truth to be for a period of time.
I just came back from London last night, and the question everybody was asking me was, can you guys in the new media be credible? And it was as though we had an incredible, credible system, you know, like this impeccable old media that was full of credibility, and we were the new kids on the block, and how could we be trusted? And so that's the first thing we need to remember, that the whole reason, other than technology, why there's been this hunger for new media is because we don't trust old media.
My name is Alex Hunsucker. I'm a business development manager at Eventful.com. Eventful is a local search engine. We aggregate millions of events from around the world and then help users discover what's going on in their neighborhood.
With me now is Robert Greenwald, founder of Brave New Films and the website called The Real McCain. We have shown many Brave New Films videos in our political campaign web coverage here on this show, and here's the man behind them. Robert Greenwald, welcome.
Thank you.
Brave New Films, give us the genesis. You come out of the movie documentary world, and now you're making all this online stuff.
Well, actually, before the documentaries, I had a career in Hollywood making TV movies and cable movies and feature films, then transitioned to documentaries, Walmart and Outfoxed and Iraq for Sale, and the last year and a half I've been doing these short online pieces for Brave New Films, and we just passed 22 million views in a year and a half.
Do you have a favorite of your own videos? Maybe we'll cut it in.
It's like your children, you know. I like the most recent one. Well, we've been having significant impact with the McCain videos because no one was telling the story that needed to be told, which was essentially his contradictions. And with the technology today, you don't have to take my word for it. You don't even have to read a speech. You just put the two videos, one right next to each other, and you say, wait a minute, what's going on? So our most recent video, McCain Has a YouTube Problem, is just closing in on 3 million views in a fairly short period of time because people are passing it around.
The neighborhoods are safe. We walk down the streets with no body armor on.
McCain's delegation was guarded by more than 100 American soldiers with 3 Black Hawk helicopters and 2 Apache gunships overhead.
General Petraeus goes out there almost every day in an unarmed Humvee.
Because I checked with General Petraeus' people overnight, and they said that he never goes out in anything less than an up-armored Humvee.
Well, I'm not saying that they could go without protection. I've been involved in every national security issue for the last 20 years. I am prepared. I am prepared, need no on-the-job training. Al-Qaeda is going back into Iran and receiving training.
You said that the Iranians were training Al-Qaeda.
I'm sorry.
Extremists.
I'm sorry, the Iranians are training extremists, not Al-Qaeda.
Have the conservatives kept up with people like you in terms of this kind of production? Are you watching what they do and they're watching you watch them? Is it at that level?
I'm not aware that there's as much on the conservative side, other than immigration, where they're beating the hell out of us. But on the rest of the issues, partly, I think, by the way, because they have Fox News and they have hate radio, so they don't have the need to find other distribution, the way we've had a need with the films, with the shorts, with the books.
And isn't that funny? Because when they talk about the origins of conservative talk radio, they say it was because the libs had the mainstream major networks back in the old media days, so talk radio is an alternative. Now you're an alternative to that.
Right, and we'll see in 10 years, as they're out of power and out of favor, what they create to try to get back in to help them create the equal balance, because we've got all this great activity on the internet.
Can you measure your success? Can you measure your impact on any of the races or people's perceptions of any of the issues?
Well, our focus is creating social change. It's bringing up the issues. We don't work for any of the individual candidates. But yes, there are a series of measurements. If you go to McCain videos, I think we have 3 or 4 out of the top 10 videos are ours.
I mean, if you just search that on YouTube or Google?
McCain videos, and there we are. So that's one measurement. Another measurement is Reverend Parsley. We were the ones who created the video that led to the campaign, that led to McCain saying, I won't have anything to do with him. And in fact, at the conference, we played a video that we just premiered today about Parsley and Brave New Films and Mother Jones working together to tell this story.
Islam is an anti-Christ religion that intends through violence to conquer the world.
And I'm very honored today to have one of the truly great leaders in America, a moral compass, a spiritual guide, Pastor Ralph Parsley, who is here.
The fact is that America was founded, I'm going to stagger you right now, America was founded in part with the intention of seeing this false religion destroyed. Muhammad received revelations from demon spirits, not from the living God.
I want to say thank you for being here. I want to thank you for, Rob, for your kind introduction.
America has historically understood herself to be a bastion against Islam in the world.
So that was another measurement. And then with Fox News, early on, we organized around convincing the Nevada Democrats not to host the debate. We created a video. They didn't host the debate. We created it from Friends of Color of Change asked us to do a video. Fox Attacks Black America.
I think these civil rights leaders are nothing more than racist. They're keeping their neighborhoods and their African-American brothers enslaved, if you will, by continuing to let them think that or force them to think that they're victims, that the whole system is against them. Articulate it better, Sean. It's so sad to me.
We can't even say you're articulate. We can't even give you guys compliments.
Half of the kids in this country under 5 years old are minorities. White people are having fewer. Put it bluntly, we need more babies.
I dealt with people like this for 20 years. They will get up every day, they will kill somebody and go have some chicken at KFC.
So we've seen a variety of very measurable victories. It's not a specific candidate, but that's not all that we do. We do all these other things.
Do you depend on kind of grassroots forwarding around and digging and things like that to spread the word? Or do you also have an organized marketing campaign?
We have a marketing campaign which depends on people spreading it. So when we do a video, we will have somebody work on the web and work on the websites and blogs, sending it to those that are interested in the issue. We will work with groups. We have someone who works with groups that might be interested in it. We work our email list, and then sometimes, depending on the video, we'll work to get attention in the traditional media.
Is there a length that works optimally in this short form?
Well, the advertisers have done a lot of research for us because they're moving billions of dollars from traditional network radio to the internet, and their research indicates around 3.5 minutes. If you get much longer, what happens is people tend to bookmark it, then they often don't go back and look at it, and there's more of a hesitancy to forward something that's longer.
The point is a website where anyone can start a campaign to raise money or get people to collectively do something as a group. You can build the critical mass or the safety in numbers you need to know that your participation or your contribution is going to make a difference before you actually do anything, allowing people to get a much more rewarding experience out of activism.
You want to stop the internet?
No, I want to stop the future. There's a highly plausible future out there that makes the internet of the past 30 years, and with that I include the personal computer that we've known and sometimes loved and sometimes hated, both seem like dinosaurs. The internet we have today didn't have to be this way. In fact, it was likely not going to be this way. It would have looked much more like CompuServe or Prodigy or AOL or any of the other competing proprietary information services where there was a vendor that decided what the experience would be like and what would be allowed within it and not. Off in the corner was the internet, started mostly as an academic exercise, .org, .gov, not a .com kind of thing at first. And it's a certain irony that the network that was built had no plan or investment in content. There was no CEO, there was no business plan, and there was no business model.
That was the beauty of it,
That's
right?
the beauty of it, and it's funny that with no plan for content, it actually ended up attracting far more activity and content than the very carefully groomed, invested in services like CompuServe and AOL.
Incredible creativity as a result.
Yes, exactly. Just as the internet beat out the proprietary information services in a somewhat surprising out of left field way, you actually had the personal computer beating out a bunch of information appliances like dedicated word processors and finding their way into businesses as well as homes around the country and the world. My worry is that both of these technologies, their openness to outside contribution, what I call their generativity, once they go mainstream, you have a bunch of people using it who aren't particularly tinkerers. They're not the kinds of people who build their own clocks rather than buy them. And when it starts running outside code that might be poorly programmed or actively bad, people don't know what to do with that.
So how do you build the necessary defenses? What do you call them? Civic
technologies.
I have a special sort of definition in mind for what a civic technology is. I think of it as a technology that succeeds exactly to the extent that people are self-consciously willing to make it succeed. And a non-civic technology is one that can work pretty well even if people aren't all that into it or even aware of it.
When you build technologies that are this open to outside participation, when they get popular, they're subject to abuse, and the question is, how do you defend them? If you defend them by running either to government or to private security forces, in this case the equivalent of Norton antivirus, then you end up having to give over the kind of control that was what made these generative technologies so interesting to begin with. So a question that we might ask is there a way to configure it so that people can help defend it as more of a broad-based civic kind of thing?
Without giving all the control to
exactly.
Apple or Facebook or whatever.
And I think there are some answers on that front. There are answers that we actually see on the internet. The way in which routers on the internet talk to each other and broadcast what destinations they're near and what they are not, all on faith. That's how packets get from one end of the internet to the other. We have seen times in which routers have lied. Pakistan asked one of its ISPs to block YouTube. One of the ISPs chose to do so for Pakistanis by advertising to everything near it that it was right on top of YouTube. So all the packets for YouTube came to it and it threw them away, and that was how it blocked it.
That was the day that Pakistan broke YouTube.
Broke YouTube around the world. There was a ripple effect with even people in California thinking they were closer to YouTube by sending the packets to Pakistan than by sending them to YouTube.
But it wasn't people who thought that, it was routers
It was routers who thought that, yes.
And how was the defense organized? On the NANOG list. That's right, the North American Network Operators Group. There are people who, sort of moonlighting, sit around, they keep an eye on NANOG to see if there's anything interesting going on, and the people kind of stayed up late and strategized over how to manually reprogram the routers so that YouTube would reappear.
Is this an example of what you call the thin nerd line?
Yes, I think so, because they are operating not because they expect a paycheck, not because they'll be given a ticker tape parade, just because that's what they do.
So do we need to professionalize that?
No, I think professionalizing it exactly ends up then creating a line between those who are on the list and those who aren't. That there's actually a natural line, those who have an interest in defending the net and those who don't, that actually they do it in the sense of amateur that is, you know, amar, to love. I mean, they love what they do, and that's actually a more powerful motivator sometimes than, gee, it's 5 o'clock, we'll have to take up fixing YouTube on Monday. And you see the same kind of obsessive-compulsive stuff going on with Wikipedia. I mean, Wikipedia is, at all times, moments away from utter destruction.
Really?
There are robots crawling Wikipedia constantly, trying to turn every single article into an ad for a Rolex watch. There are vandals who go in because they don't like the president or the candidate who wants to replace him, trying to vandalize the entries. And you actually look at the workspace for Wikipedia administrators, which is totally open. Anybody, even non-administrators, can see it and act upon it. And that workspace is just full of just one damn thing after another that's gone wrong. And they go down the list and put lines through it as they fix it faster than the list accumulates. If those Wikipedians went on strike or decided to get a life, that's it. Wikipedia would be gone.
That's what makes Wikipedia sing. A lot of hard labor down in the trenches, kicking back every ladder of the barbarians scaling the walls as they climb. That's what makes it work. That's a civic defense structure that, you know, there's no way, there's no shortcut really to it.
I'm interested in finding ways to replicate that civic defense model of NANOG, of the Wikipedia editors, into the PC, for one thing, for which there is not an equivalent set of defenders, which is why we find ourselves turning to Norton antivirus and other defenses, and to many of the other social things that have come about on the net right now, for which there isn't yet a lot of solutions, such as invasions of privacy occasioned by photos floating about the net and stuff.
So is that a mobilization of volunteers? Is this, national service? What is it?
I think it's development of technologies to make it easy for people who want to help. Wikipedia crucially has technologies, the technologies of the wiki, so that if somebody vandalizes a page, in about 10 seconds, the next person can come along and unvandalize it. If that technology wasn't there, if you had to painstakingly recreate the page, you wouldn't have people doing it.
To build institutions and organizations that embrace the civic defense part to keep alive the technologies we value so much. Stop Badware has a project by which we want to have a dial available on the machine. You can choose to download code that will send your machine's vital signs to everybody else participating. And we can then see what code makes machines happy and what tends to make them sad. And at the point at which this system is worth gaming, we will know we have reached our first milestone of success. And similarly for the OpenNet initiative that tracks internet filtering around the world, we want to have a chance, if you can't get to a website, to just click on a button in your Firefox browser that says, I can't get there from here. And by aggregating across everybody saying, I can't get there from here, what's going on, we actually have a sense of what's going on. Because we see that a bunch of people in China are saying, why can't I get to BBC? Now we can infer something about a block somewhere in China. It's these kinds of civic technologies that can keep free that which began in a backwater that assumed certain qualities that we know, writ large, we can't assume anymore.
We'll continue in a minute with our highlights from the Personal Democracy Forum at Jazz at Lincoln Center, June 23rd and 24th, 2008.
I'm a failure. Life sucks. I hate art.
My mother said I was a piece of art.
Something like we about to take it to a new direction, uneducated you with questions. Something like modern day Da Vinci paint pictures from a new perspective. Something like checking the count, bro, cause I paint pictures with a pen like Picasso. Something like if a picture wouldn't make it out the hood without academic ventures. Something like and the dudes that's feeling me FCC trying to get rid of me. Something like Van Gogh with a hood, I'm painting pictures like chapels in Italy. Something like it. Rock on. Something like do it yourself. Something like
Thank you. Thank you.
Or something like it.
We continue now with our highlights from the Personal Democracy Forum, June 23rd and 24th, 2008, from Jazz at Lincoln Center, with the web's best thinkers about technology and democracy. My two friends in the background, they're not really here, but maybe we'll meet some of their web campaign directors.
How much access did you really have to the candidates? And how much did the candidates really understand that this was more than just a system of raising money, but it was a way in which to actually change the way in which their campaigns were going to run and how democracy was going to go forward in the 21st century?
My name is Justine Lamb, and I'm working right now at politicker.com as their online marketing director. But I was previously the e-campaign director for Ron Paul's presidential campaign.
Our candidates really understood that the power of the internet, that we would sort of pursue a decentralized strategy, and he really understood that with the tools of the internet, people could obtain information on their own, and he really enjoyed actually watching YouTube videos himself.
You know,
I think our campaign was really fortunate because our candidate's wife happens to be a blogger herself, and so it was something that he, even if he wasn't maybe doing it firsthand, definitely understood because it's something that's very prevalent in their house.
My name is Tracy Russo. I was the Deputy Director of the Edwards Campaign Online Communications Program.
And at the top levels of our campaign, you know, bringing on Joe Trippi as a senior advisor early on in the process really helped just to open it up and give our department the kind of buy-in. We had the buy-in from all the levels of the campaign to get our jobs done.
You know, I think what's important is that using the internet well means that you're using it in a way that works for you. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. All campaigns and organizations have different goals and different, you know, things that they're trying to accomplish, and the key is to integrate a strategy that is going to work for your organization.
As important as the sort of familiarity, like Barack's on his BlackBerry and all that stuff, but and you know, he's searching on YouTube or whatnot, but I think even more important is that he's been the driving force of the ethos of our use of the technology, which is coming from a community organizer background of, you know, decentralized, power-based, giving people the tools and the training and the expectation that they would be organizers and really take control of the campaign on the ground in their communities.
You are just finishing up, I guess, as Internet Director for the Hillary Clinton campaign?
That's correct. I'm not big into the internet has arrived, but it really did arrive this cycle. Perfect example, the three Democrats sitting here. Tracy, I had the privilege of obviously representing John Elizabeth Edwards in 2004 when I worked for the Kerry Edwards campaign. As you say, brilliant blogger, was aware of everything from Democratic Underground to different bloggers. Joe, totally people-powered campaign. Amazing what they've done. With our campaign, the past few months, it was really our grassroots supporters who carried the campaign, whether it's fundraising or actions they've taken. I mean, Hillary launched her campaign online. It's amazing. I mean, you know, Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign was launched with the website going live on a Saturday, and then she did 3 live interactive web broadcasts. So these 3 campaigns are internet-fueled campaigns.
So the word out there in the general media is that the Obama folks out-webbed you. Did they?
I think the Obama campaign made great use of the internet. I believe that our campaign innovated as well online. In the last few months of the campaign, we raised tens of millions of dollars online. Her grassroots supporters were the backbone of the campaign. The senators and her team are very web savvy. We're always focused on the internet as a component of the campaign. You know, everything from the Sopranos spoof video, which reached tens of millions of people, to massive interactive town halls. You know, we've used the internet in creative ways. I think it's good for Democrats overall that, you know, as a party, we are really making creative use and really blazing the way for how this medium is used going forward.
Was there a learning curve as you went through this campaign?
Well, you know, I did this something similar for the Kerry campaign in 2004. I was talking to my counterpart of the Obama campaign at a panel yesterday, and at a panel we did a couple of weeks ago. He had the Howard Dean experience. So really, almost everyone who's doing it right now was either with Dean or with Kerry in 2004. So we're all collectively, essentially, learning, you know, in some ways by the seat of our pants. It's a learning curve for all of us. You know, we didn't know social networks would even be functional as an organizing tool at the start of the campaign. Clearly, they are. We didn't realize the immense amounts of small donor contributions that our campaigns would get. So we're all learning. It's a brand new field, and we're learning from one another.
I don't think that the Hillary campaign necessarily lacked any kind of bottom-up understanding. I think they had that. I think what they didn't have was the sustained environment to funnel the people into. The Obama campaign could capture that energy and funnel it towards a common goal, whereas the Hillary campaign, it was more piecemeal because they didn't kind of have the tools to bring it all together.
You know, some of the issues that we dealt with as an internet department for the senator were, you know, demographic challenges where some of her supporters were not traditional Netroots activists or political online users. You know, older voters, lower income voters who weren't your traditional online activists. So bringing those supporters to the web was a challenge. And so there were a number of areas, you know, for example, you know, a lot of her supporters didn't really feel that she needed their financial contribution early on until after the announcement of the loan in February.
And so that's sort of been spun into, well, she caught up a year late. But we had spent that entire first year building those communities that could then all come together at that point once they perceived a need and come through for her. And that's the way it is. You're building communities, and it's a long process.
The Obama campaign has a social network. You can join a group for anything. You can join based on affinity for a particular cause or tactic, or you can join based on a geographical location. And the ones that are geographically located are incredibly powerful. For instance, my hometown is Boca Raton, Florida, and my local Obama group this weekend had a canvas on the beach. They brocked the beach, and they went, they organized themselves to go out to the beach with voter registration forms, with sign-up forms to volunteer with them for future events for the campaign, and just talked about the campaign. And they, that was not an edict from Chicago. It was all on their own and their own enthusiasm, being put into action.
Is there really a listening ethos within the campaigns?
Absolutely. I mean, I got to say, all of 2008 was a real conversation. It's funny that that's how the campaign started, let the conversation begin. It was a conversation between Hillary and her grassroots supporters through email, through blogs, through various mechanisms, directly to her, directly to her senior staff.
Is it two-way communication?
It is. It always is, because they're talking to you either through your blog or responding to emails or just sending in letters or emails, and you're listening to them, and you're also emailing them back. You're talking to them on your blog. You have social networks where they're active. It is a two-way street.
But has any candidate ever emailed a supporter back directly in their own voice, as opposed to a mass email saying, "Thanks for sending me those wonderful notes of encourment"? Is that actually happening? Joe, you're nodding your head, so tell us more.
Yes.
No, but actually, but to a supporter that the candidate did not know under any circumstances prior to the email arriving.
You'd be surprised how many folks manage to get their hands on the actual functional day-to-day email addresses of the candidate, the campaign manager, anybody who's a sender on an email, me, it's sort of...
Those are fun.
And it's not, that's okay, that's great, we're responsive, except, if you, the volume considering.
When you have a politician's profile in your hand and you're communicating for him, it's not just a top-down, here's an email blast from us to you. A lot of times the people on those sites are emailing us all the time, asking us questions, and being very responsive to them, quick in your response, letting them post things on your site, even if you disagree with them, letting sort of the crowd, the wisdom of the crowds kind of self-correct and respond to any erroneous views on your candidate. You don't really have to go to his defense all the time, because most of the time supporters are able to defend him just as well as you can.
What's the right going to do to catch up with this incredible juggernaut called the Barack Obama internet campaign?
Sure. Well, I mean, first off, we obviously don't discount the incredible work that these guys are doing, and clearly they're doing a lot to organize online.
I'm Mark Suhu, Senior Vice President of Campaign Solutions, and we work with John McCain 2008.
Part of it may be that it's a different kind of organizing. It's a different audience that you're talking to. And so that, just because you don't have as many Facebook supporters doesn't mean you don't have as many actual supporters. If we really are trailing 1 million to whatever 100,000, the poll number should be 90 to 10 or whatever. And in fact, John McCain is still doing fairly well in the polls, which indicates that there is this community of people. They just may not be on Facebook. And I think that's one of our things that we constantly work on as an e-campaign is coming up with ways that we can talk to our supporters and get our supporters motivated across the board.
So what about fundraising? There's been so much said about the Obama campaign revolutionizing fundraising this year because of the web. Are you trying to learn from that and do some of the same thing?
Well, actually, I think if you look back at John McCain 2000, that really was the first campaign where online fundraising really played a measurable difference in the campaign. And so certainly I think this time we've done very well on our own right in fundraising. Obviously, all credit to the Obama campaign for what they've done online. But we're very proud of what we're accomplishing, and we're continuing to work hard at it every day.
Now, the Ron Paul campaign was a real phenomenon on the web. Did you drive that?
Some people like to claim that. I see it as it was an amalgamation of different things. It was being a unique candidate with a different message, and the fact that our supporters were very passionate because of his message, and the fact that there was the internet that was driving this, because it enabled them to use free tools online that weren't available even in the 2004 election.
Only a piece of our strategy is johnmccain.com, and in fact, only a piece of our time is spent on that. Obviously, it's the most public and one that we spend a lot of effort on. But certainly the range of things that we, Facebook and MySpace and YouTube, we've had a lot of very interesting video produced for the campaign.
What is it that defines a great leader? Is it his courage? Is it his courage to do the difficult and not just the easy things? Is it the courage to fight to survive? Faith certainly plays a role. Faith in God, faith in your fathers, faith in your friends and band of brothers.
I have a sense that campaigns themselves are actually less powerful and less important than they were in previous election cycles. And that more power, this is kind of what we're here talking about, is actually in the people that are supporting them on their own independent efforts online and then kind of plugging that through the campaign. Really, where the effort is going to need to come and where it needs to be stepped up is in sort of the right roots that Patrick talked about earlier. And in the independent organizations that raise up online, like the left did, starting, in the first Bush term or even before that, in kind of their fight back up to power.
The number of views of Ron Paul-related videos was astronomical, and yet it didn't translate to votes at the polls relative to the other candidates. Why not?
Well, it's something I guess people are going to be asking for the next few years, just like they asked about Dean's campaign. Why is it that he didn't win the election in 2004, and why didn't Paul win, or why didn't Paul do as good as a lot of his supporters thought he would? And I think it always comes down to basic campaigning. Even though the internet's here still, you need to be able to have the on-the-ground campaign efforts that generate votes. A lot of our supporters thought if we just raised enough money, that would win us the election.
I'm Ron Paul, and I'm running for president.
Meet Ron Paul, winner of the biggest money bomb of this year's Republican presidential campaign. That's what his supporters call it, his money bomb. It means his supporters dropped $4,380,000 in 24 hours. That's $182,500 per hour, $3,042 per second.
Well, thank you for the support. We've always known the message was very powerful, but we didn't know how many people would support it.
But his supporters call Ron Paul an internet sensation, much like Howard Dean was. Only better.
And our #1 story on the countdown, big news from Senator John McCain's presidential campaign. The senator is now officially moving into the late 20th century, saying that he's learning to get online. In a wide-ranging interview with the New York Times last Friday, the subject of political blogs was broached. More on that in a moment. But Senator McCain was asked if he went online himself. Quote, "They go on for me," the senator answered. "I am learning to get online myself, and I will have that down fairly soon. Getting on myself. I don't expect to be a great communicator. I don't expect to set up my own blog, but I am becoming computer literate to the point where I can get the information that I need."
One of the reasons why a McCain presidency, to me, just doesn't make sense beyond the partisan issues, because I don't understand how you lead America forward into a new age without the frame of reference to understand the potential that all of this holds.
I just want to comment that although it's great to think that either McCain or Barack Obama's administration is going to open up the White House and open up the processes to the public, I think it's really the burden and responsibility should fall on us, on everyone in this audience. People that have supported candidates in the past have been politically passionate or just interested in the direction our country is going. It's up to you to create these sort of technological tools, such as wikis or something that expose what's going on, like Sunlight Foundation, or I know Politicker is doing something too with them on some Wikipedia articles, and so many nonprofits are doing work, and you guys need to work hard and make sure that they're accountable, whichever administration is in power.
To go back to Tracy's point, I think that it's a mistake to assume that John McCain has no knowledge of this stuff. I mean, this is a man who's served in the United States Senate, has been, on a number of committees that are.
He doesn't use a computer. I mean, I wasn't making
You
it
don't
up.
but you don't necessarily have to use a computer to understand how it shapes the country. And I think he has a.
No, that's the point, though. You do. Like, that's exactly the point.
I think that John McCain is a man who has.
You can't just say you're a maverick and say you're a straight talker, because it's the frame of reference that comes with being engaged in using the technology and tools that are moving our entire world forward. It's powering a global economy and bringing about massive change. It has the potential to transform and revolutionize and give people back the power that they so rightly deserve to have.
I don't think that's necessarily lost. I mean, obviously, that's not lost on. I mean, John McCain is aware that their internet. I mean, it's not like this is like a completely ridiculous thing that he just doesn't understand. This is a man who has, a very long history of understanding a range of issues.
I would try explaining email, Facebook, Twitter, Google, and massive social movements to your grandmother, and then asking them to apply that to governing and see if it would work for you. Because, I mean.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Sorry.
Go to a question.
I think that technology is really changing the way we live our lives. It's slowly creeping in, and that things that, I can't imagine, meeting someone at the airport without a cell phone these days, which 10 years ago, you just stood by the curb. And so, I mean, there's these small changes that I think are building up to something that's really big, and having an engaged and empowered citizenry that has the ability, there's a low opportunity cost to get involved. It's not just the space that only a few wealthy individuals have the time and opportunity to participate in. I think that's where the big changes are coming.
This may be an opportunity to say something that I've been wanting to say, because it's something a little bit larger, and I'm gonna push your book. I hope you don't mind. There's a book that they put together for the conference. It's just great. I'm halfway through it. Really some brilliant writing in here. You guys should try to pick it up. Rebooting America. There you go.
It's all in your bags.
But in reading that, there's a lot of grand thinking, and it just may be me, but I try not to be so grandiose about what this is going to do. Are these just tools that are just making it easier for people to connect and talk and do things? Or is it actually something that's going to change who we are in a really profound way? The concept of the social web and the sort of networked culture, which Joe Trippi talks about a lot, it is possible that is actually changing our brains and our minds and the way we actually view the world, the way we perceive reality, and thus it's changing reality.
I'm Diane Ronaldo. I'm the Director of Political Advertising at Yahoo. We are at the Personal Democracy Forum because it's a great gathering and a real opportunity for us to meet with, to speak with, to hear from people with a lot of helpful ideas. Our goal and our commitment is to really work with the political campaigns and issues and advocacy organizations to help figure out how online advertising can help them meet all of their objectives.
Douglas Rushkoff is with me, General Personal Democracy and Internet guru and genius, and his latest book is Get Back in the Box, is that what you call it? But it's not a book interview. We're talking about issues raised at the Personal Democracy Forum, and you gave a sort of keynote this morning that questioned the very notion of personal democracy. What did you say?
Yeah, well, it was funny. I mean, I was standing there in front of the sign that said Personal Democracy Forum, and I was thinking, what the heck is personal democracy? To me, personal democracy is an oxymoron. I don't think it really exists. And I think that the illusion of a personal democracy has actually been one of the main obstacles to achieving true democracy pretty much anywhere. There's the personal, and then there's sort of the community, the collective, the what democracy is for, which is this collective.
It's about other people.
About other people. And so I ended up speaking about really the invention of the individual back in the Renaissance. And I looked at the invention of the individual and perspective painting and reading thanks to the printing press, and how all these things led to these great kind of Enlightenment ideals. This celebration of the individual and personal property, and we each have our rights, and how easily that really became part of brand culture and corporate culture, appealing to the self and selfishness and individuality. For every enhancement of the so-called rights of the individual came a corresponding increase of the power of central authorities to actually control what was going on. The simplest way to see it would be the divide and conquer. The less community we have, the less collective we have, the less of even a consciousness of us as an organism together, as a group of people, the more we are out for our self-interests, our personal stakes, and the more we express them through the great institutions of democracy, the much easier we are to control and the much less collective power we have. Now, most of us experience democracy from this very personal, what's in it for me, selfish perspective. And that even here at this great conference with all these people who are technology and policy people who care about the world, I can kind of hear the undercurrent in their conversation as well. Is there going to be a job on K Street for me from this? It's a slight sort of job market. I mean, because everyone senses Obama's coming, so maybe there's going to be room. And
my impression of the PDF people are people who are really concerned about the world, concerned generally about something outside themselves.
Yeah.
And what they see is a media that traditionally hasn't been outside of itself. It's been for its own interests.
Right.
Right, for making a buck through commercials, and that has so degenerated what we think of as news.
And a media that relates to the public as individuals rather than as a collective. I mean, you sell more goods to more people in less time if you treat them as individual little target markets rather than as a group. You know, that's why, you know, for the grill company, it's better for you to have a grill and me to have a grill than for us to barbecue together.
But it's outputs, right? They're putting out to you to do things as consumers, as individuals. Now, personal democracy, as enabled by the internet, citizen journalism, posting things on YouTube, everything, is citizens, again, are inputting into the power structure.
Right, which is the first step. What they have to do, though, is not to see ourselves as inputting into the sort of brand mythology of Obama or a party or a movement, but instead, you know, using these tools to actually start to get the work that needs to be done. I would argue in a true participatory democracy, the opportunity here is not just to feed back through writing. It's not just to write about it. It's not just to be great citizen journalists. It's to be actual participatory citizens, actually participating in the reprogramming of the culture that we live in. What I was trying to pose to the audience here was a real now what? It's like, okay, you know how to use these tools to get someone elected. Now do we know how to use these tools to actually invigorate the demos, you know, the civic reality?
And I think one of the interesting tests is going to come if Obama is elected. What's going to happen then to this entire kind of webocracy that's been created, right? To this whole decentralized activist community that gave him money and viewed will.i.am's video 1 million times, and, you know, all this stuff.
And that has 2 or 3 million different perspectives on who Obama is and what he should actually
do. Right, that's right. Well, then they're not going to be Obamacons or whatever the word is anymore. They're going to be trying to influence the administration.
Right.
And then it's going to be interesting to me to see if he's elected what that shift of power or the evolving relationship between him and, you know, the mass of newly involved people that his candidacy helped unleashed is going to be.
Rather than the internet itself being the way to better government or to new government, can't we just use the internet model? In other words, rather than seeing ourselves as a spectatorship or an audience for democracy, what if we're participants in democracy, the same way that we're participants online instead of just watchers of television? And really trying to apply the open source model to law, to governance. I mean, it's as old as the Bible. Talked about that this morning too. When you sit down with your brother-in-law and write the rules by which a civilization is supposed to live, you know, what is that like when when law, not just the voting process, but the legislative process and the governance process and the civics process is seen as an open source phenomenon, as something where we all gather together, we treat no rule as too sacred to be looked at and changed and altered, or no regulation to be either made or undone that's getting in our way.
At electionwall.com, we believe in e-democracy in a world fashion. We believe that this technology does not win a campaign; it empowers a campaign. World leaders at every single level, world political parties, are looking at the internet actually as the ability to go ahead and empower themselves, not necessarily just to reach voters, but to also educate them about the democracy process. Here's the reality. The reality is the internet's not going anywhere, and it's not going to shut off. And if the democracies fail and the internet gets shut off, then I'm out of business.
It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues, our special edition from the 5th Annual Personal Democracy Forum, June 23rd and 24th at Rose Hall Lincoln Center, Jesuit Lincoln Center. So this is Andrew Richey, this is Mika Sifry. They've been on this show before. Now they're here as the organizers of the Personal Democracy Forum. And what is this? You're going to change the name next year?
Well, we realized this year with such a large turnout that the web has been adopted by an entire culture of people who believe in participatory democracy and using the web for sharing information with each other. So we've realized that we've gone beyond personalization to participation, and since a lot of people call our conference PDF anyway, we've decided that we're going to now correctly name it for what it really stands for.
Technology is empowering individuals in new ways, but when they act in the public sphere, they typically act together as a people, right? Not just as individuals.
So this 5th annual conference is taking place in the heart of a presidential campaign, and one that has been so defined by the internet, both in fundraising and other kinds of organizing. What was new here this year?
Well, what's new is that in all our past conferences, we focused on the potential of technology to improve the way elections happen. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that there's huge potential for what technology and the information age can do for how governance happens. What happens after elections? What do people do with this technology? You know, if Barack Obama is elected president of the United States, he may go into office with a 3 million person email list. That may be a very powerful force to get him into office, but it may also turn into his own special interest group that can then be used to help pass his legislative agenda, or more importantly, hold him accountable and hold his feet to the fire for the promises that he made during the campaign.
What mechanism would allow that to happen? Because I know we like to think that this is kind of self-starting, user-generated, but there was an Obama campaign out there setting those fires.
Right.
So once he's elected, can this community then turn around and become kind of a people's lobby group to an Obama administration if he wins?
Well, I think that the answer is that there are lots of people's lobby groups now. I mean, and that what has changed here, what Clay Shirky talked about yesterday, from Clay Shirky from NYU, is that just in the last decade, we've seen an explosion of new participation in the public arena, because the internet just makes it so incredibly easy to form a group and communicate. And so while the Obama phenomenon is obviously a very organized operation, you know, one of the things that I think is happening is more and more people are learning that they have the tools themselves. You can create a message now. You edit it well, make it good and compelling in some way, put it up on YouTube, people will spread it for you. Obama, in fact, may be better positioned than any other president to deal with what's anyway coming, right? Because he's going to be bombarded by all kinds of organized interest groups who have these new powers that they can use as well. But if he comes in there with a large networked organization such as the one he's been building, and he keeps working with it, and not just telling it what he wants, but listening to what its members also want, he may have the ability to move his agenda in a more successful way than most presidents.
What were some other highlights? What you know, if you're going to go to dinner later and have a drink and say, well, you know, hey, you know who was really great this year?
Well, I mean, it's endless. I mean, I can't even start.
I'll give you my favorite so far. So we were hoping to have Elizabeth Edwards with us live.
And she, you know, a good friend of the conference, a personal friend of Andrew's. She was here 2 years ago. Unfortunately, there were thunderstorms that just shut down all the flights from North Carolina. So we scrambled, we moved the whole schedule around, and we managed to figure out how to get a laptop with a little camera in it that could run Skype, which is the voice over internet program that anybody can use for free. It has a great video connecting tool. The whole tech team here thought it wasn't going to work. And luckily, and I guess to the credit of Skype, it worked beautifully.
Do you think that the presidential candidates really do understand the power of the internet, or do they really, as a whole, do you think that they still think of it only as a spigot that might get them some money that helps them do the rest of the campaign the old-fashioned way?
The truthful answer is it's mostly a spigot for them right now. Because it's such an effective spigot, I think that they may start to see it in other ways. Candidates who are further down the feeding chain from the mainstream media see more potential in it because they have to find some way, some outlet.
So we had a live video conference with Elizabeth Edwards. She was able to hear the questions from the audience. And then the icing on the cake, Andrew's talking to her, and suddenly we see this guy go walking past the background with some kids running after him. And we're like, wait a second, that's John.
Unless it translates into actual votes, something they can't, you know, maybe.
Hey, Elizabeth, get John to come over and say hi. John just wrote. Get him over here to say hi.
Here, John, sit down and say hi to PDF.
Hey, John. If Elizabeth hasn't told you, John, we have a conference here in New York called the Personal Democracy Forum, and there's about 1,000 people here who are expecting Elizabeth this morning, and unfortunately the weather didn't allow her to make it. So we use technology. You may have heard of it. It's called the Internet. Yeah. To bring her to everyone in real time, and you are a surprise guest. I swear this was not planned. So as long as we have you, the big question we have is. I'm sorry?
I just walked in.
Are you talking about the internet or into your house?
Probably both, but mostly my house.
So I think the one big question everybody has is, do you think that the internet was effectively used in your campaign, and do you think that it's going to be a powerful force in the coming election and may actually change the course of history?
Well, the second question is easier to answer than the first. I think we did some things very well. We had some terrific people doing internet stuff with us in the campaign, including you for some period of time. I don't know if you disclosed that to your audience, but
too late now.
But on the second question, I don't think there's any doubt the internet's going to make an enormous difference. I'm waving to my children, who I haven't spoken to. I'm speaking to you before I speak to my children.
If the President of the United States doesn't understand at least the rudimentary reasons how a computer works, then he doesn't understand how the world works. And if he doesn't understand how the world works, how can he be President of the United States? We've gotten that far along that structurally in the brain of a decision maker, you have to have an appreciation for what it is. You can't just say, I know what the internet is. You have to know what it means and what it can do.
Right. That doesn't mean he has to know how to to swap out a card and put in another one. I don't know how to, do much more than change the oil on my car, but I do know how to operate a car. And I think that's Andrew's point, is you got to have some sense of the power of this technology. You can only get that from personally using it.
And that's it for this special edition of Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues, from the Personal Democracy Forum at Jazz at Lincoln Center on June 23rd and 24th.